Hi guys, welcome to the fourth part of the video, what is space? And I think the fourth part is the one that should be really amazed or interesting. So first of all, where's my notes? My notes are over here. What is space? So I did some research and I was in the dictionary of etymology means a dictionary of etymology means that you find there the roots of the word, where it came from and the meaning of it. So in the year 1200, space comes from the Latin word spatium, that means room, area, distance, stretch of time. In the year around 1300 was a similar definition. It called extent or area, room, in Old French, espace, period of time, distance, interval, and to do something. And in 1500, space meant to make of a certain extent. Space can also be seen as between, as I said in previous videos. And what is really interesting is, what's really amazing is space explained the definition of, one of the definitions of space was explained in 1968. Eccentric person disconnected with reality. Very interesting, and I will go to that on. I want you guys to hold on that sentence. Eccentric person disconnected with reality. And also 1968, space meaning to be in a state of euphoria. Before I go on with that one, I want to say something up front, that we know the common senses what a human being has, which is smell, taste, hear, see, and feel. And I think, I don't know why, but I think what should normally be included in that should be thinking, because thinking is also a sense. It's also a sense like smell, taste, hear, see, feel. Or maybe there was a specific reason they exclude thinking. But when they exclude thinking, that could be also mean that thinking is out of the body. Because why I say that is because the five senses, smell, taste, hear, see, and feel, is actually everything in our body. We can touch it, we can smell it, we can hear it, we can taste it, we can see it, and we can feel it. So that has everything to do with our body, right? It's all internal in the body. And maybe the reason why thinking is excluded, because it could be that thinking might be not in the internal body, it's something out of the body. It could be the communication between the body and the outer. That machine, the thinking process, that interaction, the reaction between the outer and the inner. So that could be another reason. So So the interesting thing is, what really got me, because I've seen a lot of definitions in different centuries, 1500, 1200, 1300, and 1968. But what it's really interesting is that the similar words, what you always see is it's a room, is an extent or an area to do something. It's also as a distance, a stretch of time, and from Latin spatium. And yeah, I want you to hold on this one right there. 1968, the space would occur. The word space also occurred in 1968, I think, in the social area. Eccentric person disconnected with reality. So that's interesting. So what is then reality and what is not reality? So, but hold that now in the back. The eccentric person disconnects with reality, 1968. Space meaning to be in a state of euphoria, right? So let me show you something. And I want you to really, what I want you to see is how the process goes and how the progressing goes and the connecting of similarities, and use it then as a reference and as a definition and as a structure. All right, so what is space? I call it the playground of ideas, but as I said, it's always my own theories, what I think about, my investigation. So space, just imagine space is this, right? So space is actually nothing. You don't see anything. Space is nothing. There's just nothing. I know it's hard to imagine, but that's the playground of ideas. There's nothing. So you start with nothing. So NASA and now I want you to see how things progress, how things become imaginary, and how formulas being created during this process, and how we imagine those processes better by giving it a definition, a structure, and a reference. All right. So as I said, this is space, right? This is space. Now, if we fly with a rocket in the space and I always show you similarities in the psychological field, the mind thinking process, and with the nature phenomena, which is mostly of the time with the space where NASA operates with the space shuttles, etc. Because I think that the space what NASA operates up there is the same kind of a thing how our mind works. So this is space. And I know, and we see there's nothing to imagine because there is no structure, there is no reference, there are no markers, nothing, hit markers, nothing. So NASA launched a rocket into space for the very first time. And what it sees is, in that space, it tries to search, to find, to look for something, to have a marker, to hold on something. And from there, we can build further on, right? So what they see is in the space, they see suddenly forms like this in space, right? So so what they discovered in space, which is a blank canvas in the beginning, by seeking, discovering awareness, attention, and silence, absolute silence, and no disturbance of nothing, they see then suddenly two planets. They call it planets later, but I see first two forms which are round circle. So they see, okay, this is a round circle, and this is a round circle which we call later planets. Now, what they figured out, what this is how mathematics and this is how geometry is introduced in our thinking process. So they say, okay, there are two forms that looks like round spheres, and this must have to have a weight like a human being, right? A weight, you know, how many pounds, how much is it weighing? And then also, why we don't try to find the distance between this and this? So we created a line, which we call a distance, which connects two locations or two dots, right? So now, space, what is space in our mind? There is no structure, no reference, no markers, no things you can hold on, because it's empty, it's nothing, it's silence, it's nothing is interrupting, it's you're alone. So that's the space. Now what you do is you observe, you watch, you listen, you try to seek and find out. You want to recognize something where you can hold on of. And then suddenly you see in that space, in the mind, to imagine things, we have to why we don't make that space and just make a line, which we learned from the NASA in the space, the picture I just drew minutes ago. Why we don't create a line which we perceived in the space, connecting two locations in the space, why we don't transfer it in the human mind and operate it in our daily operation. So now what you see is we have here a form, a structure, a reference that has divided the space, which was in the beginning nothing to hold on of, nothing to imagine, but now we see that there are two parts. So we have two, right? Because we divided it. So now we have a reference. We can divide space. We have here the left space, and we have here the right space. So we also created, there are two sides. There's also, we have left and right. This is, I want to show you, this is how ideas being created out of nothing. So we have, we divide it. We divide it. We have two sides, left and right, and there are two sides, and it's divided. So now we see something, and we can use this now as a reference. So now we can start to imagine what happens if we just close that space, just for instance a triangle in this example. So now we, out of nothing, we see something which we call later on a triangle, right? So we have a triangle. It has three dots or three corners or three planets in the space, and we created out of nothing a triangle. Now when we see that in the star, in the sky, in the night sky, we see those forms as well, the constellation of the zodiacs, or how you call it, I think zodiac. So it's always this replicating how we can use it in our daily life. So now we have a triangle which we were imagining we have seen in the sky. So this becomes now a form, and this form has now a geometrical, a mathematical information, data. It has a distance. It has a distance. We can say that if these are planets or two dots, it could be locations, or it could be just two dots or planets. So we can give all kinds of definition of a dot or of a line. So now we have created a distance between two objects, right? Between this board here and me is a distance, right? Because this is a separated form. It was divided from all, and it has a separate form, and I have a separate form, but actually we are all together. But I will go into it in some other videos into it. So this is how out of nothing you create something. So this becomes now a form, right? So now we can calculate from A to B, B and C, etc. And we can call, if we, or another form what we can do is, if, because there's nothing, there's just blank, it's just space, nothing. We can also create a circle, because we saw the planets, so we draw the planet on a piece of paper, and now we can imagine something, a form. It looks like a sphere, it looks like a circle. Because if you see just space in its natural, in its essence, there's nothing to grasp, nothing to hold on of, right? There's nothing your thought process can start to operating. Because thought, most of the time, people cannot think without a reason. They always have to think. They only can think when there's a reason behind it, a cause behind it. But I think that people are capable of, and I'm one of them, to think without a reason. So it's hard to grasp like this. So when we have a reference, like a circle, we have divided the space in this particular form. We have cut that out of all of the space. We cut it out, that particle, which we call now a circle. And now when we look at it, we have this, we can imagine it in our mind. And also we can see something now. We can call this now the outer space, and inside we can call it the inner space. So this is how ideas being created. This is the process, the progression of an idea. How you create an idea out of nothing, out of space. Because there's a process, you know, there's a process, graduate process going on, so you can imagine it, you know. So then you have the inner and outer space, then you can calculate the inner side and the outer ring of the sphere, and so on. You can go now endless, you can divide it, and you have 4 parts, and so on. So geometry is one of the first, and what is really important is that everything starts with space. Everything starts with darkness, with space, with silence, where you are alone. There's nothing. There's absolutely no forms, nothing. And in that state, you are aware. You observe, you watch, you try to recognize things, right? Intervals, frequencies, forms, etc. So that's what I'm saying. So when NASA is up in the space, that's how they create stuff. That's how they discover things, right? So they go for the first time out in the space with the rocket. For the very first time, everything is new, nothing, and then see those planets. And then I have an idea, okay, this planet is on this side, this planet is on this side, why we don't connect it? And then we call it a distance, and now we can calculate from A to B, and maybe we can create a mathematical measure that. Measure is the, I think measure is the better word. We can measure the weight of this planet. So we have the weight, we have the distance, and now we know when we replicate those two dots or those two locations on a geographical card, we can calculate the distance and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm saying. Space, now this is how geometry mathematics is been created, how ideas been created, and that's why I'm saying it's really interesting. In 1968 they said space definition in that sense is an eccentric person disconnects with reality. And space meaning to be in a state of euphoria. So that's really, really interesting. So I hope you liked it. I will make further videos really coming up. I just given you an idea of what is space, how ideas being created in space, how concepts being created, because everything what we learn starts always with space, with emptiness, with I don't know. That's the first process, because we are conditioned to train that we automatically say, oh, I know. But actually that is blocking yourself, because the truth is you don't know. And I think it's a health, sane beginning if you start with I don't know. Because if you in that I don't know, then you are confronted in this. There's nothing to imagine. There's space. There's no definition, no structure, and no reference, nothing. And from there you build up on, right? You observe, you're aware, you try to recognize things, similarities, and you write them down or whatnot, and then you operate like this. And this is how an idea being created. So thank you for watching. I hope it could help a little bit. What is space?